are my linen garment I put on. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on, while I minister to you in the inner courts. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. They shall not gird themselves with anything that causes sweat. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on. Lord, you are my linen garment I put on, while I minister to you in the inner courts. Oh, your garments smell of earth and aloe, of acacia. Oh, your garments smell of myrrh and aloe, of acacia, as I minister to you in the inner.
Well, hello, you mighty Linenites. Today, this video is basically going to be back to the basics. Just a general fundamental overview for all of you who may be asking yourself, what are the Linenites? Because some people maybe have come along to our channel or to maybe our Facebook group, Becoming a Linenite. You may have stumbled onto it and not had any idea what this is really about. And first of all, before I go any further, I highly recommend you go watch episode 1 of Becoming a Linenite. If you have already, fantastic. You could do for a refresher. It's been a few months, right? Now, today, I just want to go back to some of the fundamentals because I realized that there's some people that may have come along more recently that have no idea what it is we're doing with a lot of this. And they're like, why is it you guys are talking about grain and modesty and vanity and water and sapphire and stones and armor and hammers? Today, I brought a hammer for my prop because originally, full confession, I was going to bring a sword because I was a little teeved. Some people have been not so kind as of late, and I want to just kind of address that because I think it's just a lack of understanding and a miscommunication. So I'm going to do my best to kind of alleviate some of that. But becoming Linenites. Linenites, like I've said before, are people that have come along in a moment of time in their life and had some of the scales of Babylon, like the systems of the world out there, have slowly been ripped off of their face, maybe by the set-apart Spirit, the Holy Spirit, or sometimes, mercifully also, by just good human beings who kindly care about them enough to share with them the truth that they've discovered. There's a lot of people out there who are kind of wondering and dismayed at what's going to happen in the next few days, what'll happen in the next 6 months or year. But I'm going to tell you about something. There's a really interesting other group of people that are out there who laugh and actually rejoice in times of calamity. And we're going to learn about them from the Sword of the Covenant. This is the Sword of the Covenant. If you haven't read it, I'm sorry. You're probably not going to understand what it means to be a Linenite, because the primary, most important thing about becoming a Linenite is that you become somebody who cares more about the scriptures, the Sword of the Covenant, than anything else in your life. That at the fundamental, most pivotal testing point of your life, the foundation point of your life, is this. Because if you build your house on anything else in your life, like what you believe is truth, fundamentals, right? What is truth to you? I spent many years in a university town called Boulder, Colorado, where the truth was always something that it was talked about as if it was liquid. Like it was something that really just kind of came and went for everybody else, that, you know, what you believe is yours to believe and what I believe to be truth is truth. I almost got a minor's degree in philosophy at a very secular university. So you can imagine some of the discussions in my classes were not so awesome. But at the epicenter of what truth really is, you're going to find it here in the scripture. Truth is established by as it's been written. And becoming a Linenite really means you start to establish what is truth based off of what you find in here. Whether it's linen garments, which are at their fundamental truth point in our lives, garments for our skin. Like our skin is literally the outer suit for the tabernacle. like we are supposed to be a place where the set apart spirit could come and rest upon us. So I want to read for you guys Proverbs 31, because the Proverbs 31 woman is the fundamental junction point for all of us. And it's not just women. It's not just talking about a girls. Do you get what I'm saying here? Like, it's about people who make themselves ready for their Messiah's return, like the bridegroom's return. You know he's coming back for us. If you don't know that, it's really important that you remember who you are and that the Father will teach you that if you would give regard to what it is he has to say. So let's just jump in for a second and let's go on, all right? Proverbs 31:10, reading from the Scriptures translation. Who does find a capable wife? For she is worth far more than rubies. Hold on. Rubies. Yes. I'll put that one in the sun so you guys can see it. That's a ruby. Legitimately. That's a ruby. I'll polish this one up a little bit. It actually grows in this shape, y'all. If you didn't know that, rubies and gemstones, they grow like this shape. This one at least. This is a corundum. More like a purplish ruby, so maybe more of a sapphire than anything else. But it's got these triangle shapes like mountains. I love it. Rubies, gemstones, they're marvelous. And because of that, you know, they're valuable. People are like, wow, that's a really pretty rock. I'm like, it's a gemstone. And it's obviously a gemstone because it kind of looks special. But you know what? It says very clearly here that a woman, like a very precious woman like this, a very special kind of woman, is far more valuable and spectacularly rare than rubies. Now, I found that ruby in the mountains of somewhere. I'm just going to say that. I didn't personally dig it out of the earth. Some other dude did and put it in a bucket, which I then found it, which is awesome, okay? That being said, they can actually pull those kinds of rubies out of the ground by tons. But you know what? There's these certain other kinds of rubies that are like clear, like crystal clear. And they are so rare, they're literally like $1 million worth in just a tiny baby stone, right? This is where the whole racket and rat race of what is valuable and what is not set by Babylon, right? But clear, perfectly clear red stones are very, very rare. And so they're considered to be something that is so valuable, people should give away most of their life's work to find them, acquire them, give them to other people, stuff like that. It's a way that you can show other people they're valuable. But it says this kind of woman is far more precious than rubies. The heart of her husband shall trust her, and he has no lack of gain. She shall do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She shall seek wool and flax, and with delight she works with her hands. She shall be as the ships of Tarshish. She brings in her food from afar. She also rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and what is lawful for her girls. Pause. Do you notice something about this woman? She provides food, which is why a huge portion of becoming a Linenite is also about becoming a Millenite. Linenites are Millenites because we discovered as we started to really crack open the scriptures that food is really, really fundamentally important. And like the Father loves us enough to give us food that comes out of the earth. The earth itself is literally full of food and we don't have to farm it to get it. Like we're studying foraging right now, you guys. Dadgummit. There's so much food that is all around you that you can eat, like all grasses. You can eat it. But grain, when you grind it and mill it and make it fresh into flour and then eat it, it will give you everything you basically need to live except for one other key ingredient, and that is water. You must have water to live, which is why every single day for now, almost, 56 days, I've been plunging my stinking face and body into the water. Cold water. It's freezing at times. Don't.
Well, hello! You know where I am? Outside, clearly. Even though it's raining. Honestly, I didn't want to go on a hike today because I was shivering before it started. Actually, I went swimming under a waterfall in a city. Not a big city. It was pretty nice, but I didn't want to drink that water. But don't worry. I wanted to drink this water. Not this water right here. Probably not a good idea. Somewhat stagnant. Not delicious. But it's always a good idea to go swimming in the rain because you know what? Get wet. It's good for your soul. Have you ever heard of living waters? Perhaps you should read The Sword of the Covenant. It will change your life. Just like a snorkel and a mask in a sense. Because now I can go in an environment and be prepared. Because don't you want to be like a fish? Yeah, go fish for men.
So one of the things we're going to talk about in the Linenite family is going to be cold water and why you need water, real water, like fundamentals in your life. Water are going to be super clutch. And why you wear linen. Yes, I'm reading another book, which I can't tell you about, which is all about linen and water, written in the 1800s by a man who fearlessly went where people have basically been all their lives, which is getting in rivers and creeks and streams instead of chlorinated, clear-looking pools that are full of poison that'll rot your soul and your bones all at the same time. But, question, how many times did Yeshua or Yahweh tell people that if they wanted to be healed, they had to go get in the water? You go figure it out, because that's what I'm doing. Anyways, we'll go on. Oh, and also, she seeks wool and flax. Flax is where linen comes from. She shall consider a field and buy it. From her profits she shall plant a vineyard. She shall gird herself with strength and strengthen her arms. She shall taste when her gain is good. Oh, that's Psalm 34. Hold on. This is awesome. This is like one of the best Psalms ever. Okay. This is, I don't know actually who wrote Proverbs 31. I'm sorry. I was going to maybe say this is Solomon, which is possible, but Proverbs 31 is like one of the hallmark passages for every one of us to identify with, and for each and every one of us personally to strive towards becoming. Like, okay, you ready for this? This is, oh, sweet Moses of the Nile. Check this out. This is Psalm 34 in a Bible that actually cared about the Hebrew enough to leave some of it in there for you guys. Okay, you see that? Aleph, right? Verse 1. Then you have bet. This is the Aleph bet, where we all get like the alphabetic sequence, or the alphabet. Aleph bet is how it was originally said. There's bet, there's gimel, there's dalet, there's hey, there's vav, there's zion. This is stinking spectacular. Psalm 34 is key to the alphabet, meaning the beginning of each of these verses starts with that same letter in the alphabet. And if you learn what the letters mean, each of the letters, part of a big passionate thing about becoming a Linenite is that we also are going to give regard to the Hebrew language. Like, the words themselves have value to us, even if it's not our native tongue. I get to spend a fair amount of time these days with foreigners, because if you become a migrant, vagabond, sojourner, traveling gypsy family like Chelsea and I are, we travel to different farms all across this country, and a lot of the people that we get to work with are not from here. And what's marvelously convicting about interacting with these people is how many other languages they grow up just knowing. Like, one of my favorite human beings of all time to get to spend time with are Africans. I love them so much, especially the ones who care enough about other people to tell them about their Messiah. Like missionary kids, you know, the classic missionary kid. But some of those kids who grew up in Africa, they come back to the States and they realize that there's a massive need over here, just as much as there's needs over there, because they suddenly realize that, like, the United States Christian land, the land of Christendom, is a nightmare, where most of all of us have been beguiled by the serpent that we've been worshiping our whole lives, called vanity. Yes, go check out vanity. We'll get there. But anyways, one of the cool things that he was telling me was that in Africa, it's pretty much ordinary that most people know at least 4 languages. 4 languages is like the norm. And when you meet somebody that knows like 4 languages, it's like, okay, so what? But then when you meet somebody who knows like 8 or 9, that's considered something exceptional, or like very unique. Very impressive, like, accomplishment. But one of the ways that he said you can communicate respect to somebody, or that you love them or care about them or believe that they're valuable to you, is that you would learn some of their language. And so he said that when you would meet somebody who's from a tribal area that you've not been to, like in Guinea or in the DRC, like when you go to somebody else's community and you want to learn a little bit about them and show that they matter to you, you learn their language. And so he said that was always a way, like, you would kind of bridge a gap when you're getting to know people. It's like, how do you say banana? How do you say water? How do you say creek? How do you say knife? How do you say spoon? Like, you ask them questions so that you can familiarize yourself with their language as a means of showing you matter to me. And the way you speak matters to me so much that I will change the way I speak and think and act so that I can be a reflection of who you are and the character of who you are. That gave him a leverage point to be able to get to know them in such a way that he might share with them the truth, the life, and the words that he has found to lead him to Yeshua, salvation. Which is why Linenites, at one of the foundational important things, were people who are also trying to study and examine what this has to say, but not just in English. Which brings me to Psalm 34, because this woman, the Proverbs 31 woman, she tastes and sees when her gain is good, which always makes me think of Psalm 34, because for the first time I ever really connected with this was when I started laboring with my own hands and face into the earth in order to see it bring forth a good harvest. Like actually gardening, like seriously, to where now like I'm a legitimate master vine dresser. I can travel all over the country, all over the world, and dress people's vines or work on their farms in all kinds of different capacities. And I never wanted to do that. I really didn't, you guys. I did not want to be a traveling migrant worker. I didn't want to be a sojourner who lived on other people's lands. I wanted my own land. Like I dreamed of that. I still dream of that. And the Father may give me that, but he may never. Well, hello. And welcome to another edition of Becoming a Linenite. If you haven't noticed, I'm dressed like something out of a character film that nobody's ever seen before. I used to refuse to wear every single color I'm currently wearing on my body, minus this one, because it's the best. But then I discovered, when it's sweltering hot, reference the sun. See that? If you can't tell, it's mighty. Far mightier than I've ever been. So, because of that, you must cover yourself in everything that will cool you down. Reference linen. This is armor. Basically, from now on, every time I say linen, just say armor in your head, because it is armor. It's armor for your body, and you need it every single day of your life. Now, granted, linen has some limitations. One of them, you know what? I have to be frank. It tends to mostly come from the thrift store in women's sizes. It's not horrible, but it can be the worst color choices ever known for a man. It's okay, you just gotta get over it and adapt if you shred it because, you know, you're hoss on them arms. This was my tomato shirt. I pruned an enormous amount of tomatoes. So many tomatoes, my back shredded itself open. Yeah, I was a bit bigger then, and then I leaned out like a tropical sun Holocaust victim. You know what I mean? But now, this is the wonders of linen. It's cooling me down. This headband, my gosh, it looks unbelievably unique, right? Came from a t-shirt sleeve. Some people got sleeves that are big enough for my head to fit in, which is fantastic for my head. So, linen is amazing because right now, you know what? It's swelteringly hot. Probably solid 86 degrees, 85% humidity, which puts our heat index at hotter than I'm currently comfortable with. But linen cools you down. As soon as I get a little wet, meaning I basically soak my shirts and clothing in water before I get to work. And then as I get a little breeze, I'm instantly cooled down. So, working in the garden with my other Linenite. But I've found such satisfaction in taking food that has come out of the sweat of my face, the hard labor of myself or other people that have co-labored with me, and tasting it and seeing that Yahweh is good.
Oh, it's good. It's so good. The sweat of the brow.
Psalm 34 is a psalm that describes this beautifully. Are you ready for this? Psalm 34 in this scriptures is also keyed and keeps intact much of the Hebrew letters. At the start of each verse, you see, it's keyed to the word in Hebrew. Okay, you ready? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik, Ayin, Pei, Zadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. Okay? That's the alphabet. Here's a rendition of the alphabet in the Paleo-Hebrew, like the most original formatting of it. It was more pictographic, you guys, like hieroglyphics. That's the noon on top of a samik, like Yeshua, who was raised up on an engineered structure like the cross. Anyways, that's all the Hebrew letters. This is from Eric Bissell, Paleo Hebrew. He's in like the links of most of my descriptions. If you guys ever click the descriptions below my videos, there's all kinds of stuff that is in there, other treasures that I found. But I'm trying to learn and study the Hebrew, as we talked about in episode 1 of Becoming a Linenite, because I want to know what Yahweh had to say. Like, I had this dream all my life of being like an archaeologist, kind of, or an anthropologist, I guess, in a sense. Like treasure hunting. Like, I love treasure hunting, which was something I talked about earlier, that a Proverbs 31 woman is more valuable than rubies. Like, I treasure hunt legitimately, and I crush it. I'm pretty stinking good at it. Like, the Father literally opens up treasure chests for me, like best seashells in the stinking face of the earth. end up in my hands because Yahweh is so good and he will lead me there. I generally have to sacrifice and suffer tremendously in order to get there. But once I do, he gives me life for it. It's a great trade. Now, someone who gives regard to the wonders of his scripture and learns his language, it's a way that we can show him we care about him, that what he has to say and how he chose to say it is important and precious. Like my friend from Africa, he would talk about the things that are lost in translation, but then he would talk about the things that are gained through translation. That when you have other languages in your head that are working on your mind, you then have the ability to consider things from a different kind of perspective. Learning another language gives you another lens with which you can see the world and look at the world and see it through somebody else's eyes, hear it through somebody else's ears, and then put those words in your mouth as a way of reverencing them. Psalm 34, let's just read it because I haven't actually read this in a fair minute. All right. Psalm 34, the beginning of each verse has that letter, like Aleph, at the start of the letter in Hebrew. So each of these verses also describes what that letter means as we read it. Like Hebrew in so many ways, guys, is not like English, Greek, Latin, or any other tongue that's generally used. It's a thought concept, not like just is a letter we use to make other stuff, right? Like a building block. For them, like the Aleph itself means stuff. It's got a concept behind it, like a bull or an ox, something that can go in a straight line, like this thing that you can use on the farm to plow a field, this thing that is dependable in strength. Like it means much more. So Psalm 34 is a way that we can actually see what these letters mean by just reading the scriptures. So you ready for this? Psalm 34, Aleph. I bless Yahuwah at all times. His praise is continually in my mouth. Bet. My being makes its boast in Yahuwah. Let the humble hear and be glad. Gimel. Oh, make Yahuwah great with me. Let us exalt his name together. Dalet. I sought Yahuwah, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Hey, they who look on him were radiant. Vav. And their faces were not ashamed. Zion. This poor man cried, and Yahuwah heard him, and saved him out of all his distresses. Chet. The messenger of Yahuwah encamps around all those who fear him, and rescues them. The Het, you guys, is like the big white linen fence of the tabernacle. It was a giant enclosure that would surround his people and protect them. That's the Het. That's giant white linen stuff, okay? Linen is literally, you guys, your armor. Like natural fibers. When you put them on your skin, which is a carrier of the set-apart spirit of Yahweh. Like if you put this upon your body, these natural fibers, they allow your skin organ to be shielded from the world, the systems of evil that are continually working against us. A big thing I talked about briefly in episode 1 of Becoming a Linenite was the electromagnetic field and the radiation that we're continually being bombarded with, and why linen as a medium actually protects us and insulates us from that. It actually acts as a barrier between us and that. It doesn't allow static electricity. You can go watch one of my Becoming a Gibborim episodes. I believe it was called Poisoned by Dragons, where I went into a longer discourse about a book called The Invisible Rainbow, which went much further in depth into this, about how electromagnetic fields damage our mitochondria and the metabolic processes in our body to cause us to not digest food properly and turn it into energy, which leads to a lot of sicknesses and disease and problems. But super short synopsis. Linen acts as an insulator to that. Wool, some of these other fibers are maybe not quite so good at that, but they all have their benefits in their place. I'm wearing silk a little bit more lately because it's a lot colder. And silk is super nice for regulating your temperature as well. And I'm moderately impressed at the lengthy, ability of silk to just hold up to cold weather. It's some wool garments, you guys, are not so comfy. If you can get Merino wool, that's fantastic, but it's not always available. When you do, it's fantastic, and you're like, yes! But there's other wool that's definitely a lot more coarse and a lot more like just sheepy. I don't know. I don't love it. So you can wear silk as an undergarment under your wool garments as a way of keeping yourself warm and still somewhat dry. So just something to consider. But Tet, oh, taste and see that Yahuwah is good. Blessed is the man that takes refuge in him. Okay, taste and see that Yahweh is good. and blessed is the man that takes refuge in him. This, you guys, is why I got hooked on even studying or considering anything regarding Hebrew. Because I've been to churches where the pastor is like a suave way of making a point, would be like, yes, if we look at the Hebrew, this is what it says. I don't know why I talk like that, but in my head, he sounded like that. And I'd be like, okay, cool, Hebrew. And then I learned how I had a Bible teacher in 7th grade. The only Bible teacher, a lot of different schools I went to in my life, the only Bible teacher I ever had who literally would challenge the heck out of us, man. He would take a hammer to us with his mouth and just beat the snot out of us, asking us these words like, book, chapter, and verse, tell me why you believe what you believe. He was the first, I think, exposure I had to apologetics, defending what it was I believed. And one of the things he was always so consistent on us about was knowing what the word says itself. And that was maybe the first time I ever had that. And he taught us in there how to utilize something called a concordance, which when you want to know what scripture has to say about something, you can't always get the picture by just reading it in English. Oftentimes what can happen is as we're reading it in English, it makes us think that this is what the word says. But it's not really what the word says explicitly, because translators who take a text that is written in Hebrew or a text written in Greek or Aramaic, they have a bias, because if they want to get a copyright, they want to be able to make money or profit or sell their Bibles, they have to get a copyright, which means they cannot use the same words as previous translations utilized that were copyrighted themselves, which means sometimes when you're reading along in a translation and you're like, that really is confusing, that doesn't make sense, I don't even know what that word means. A lot of times it's because they're doing that. They're changing the meaning of this text so that they can profit off of the scriptures or recover the cost that it's taken in order for them to put a lot of work into creating a translation like this. I have a dream of being able to go and read for myself, uncover, ideally in a dreamland of Nathan, that I could actually go and uncover out of the caves of Qumran, in Jordan or Egypt, that I could go over there and find the manuscripts personally and read what they have to say. Because you guys can do this. They're called the Dead Sea Scrolls. You can see with your own eyes what the words say. You could learn that if you would learn Paleo-Hebrew, because a lot of like the Dead Sea Scroll text, you guys, is not in modern Chaldean flame letters. It's not in the same format of Hebrew. So any other time I'd hear like a pastor or anybody else telling me what the Hebrew meant, they were using something called a concordance, which has basically every word that's in the English translation of the Bible written with its description of its definition, or the different definitions or how it's used in the scriptures. So then when you look at like the Strong's Concordance, you get a deeper idea of what it is that the words or the verses together are maybe saying. Or you can do the same thing for a Greek letter or a Greek word that's in there. But the problem with that is that when you just look at the Strong's Concordance, which is how I was trained in 7th grade, like how to look through a concordance to determine what the deeper meaning was, you only get a snapshot view of it. What you don't really get is really a much more in-depth knowledge base, because Hebrew is not like English. There's so much lost in translation for us that we can't understand it unless we give regard to these words. But when I was at this guy's house, shout out to you, Eric. You know who you are. Go watch my Sword of the Covenant series. There's the mighty champion, Eric. He had on his wall this chart from this guy, Eric Bissell, which has Greek, Hebrew, modern Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew, the Dead Sea Scroll font, English, all on it in a way that you can learn these languages so that you can do your own translations yourself, and so that you yourself can be able to look at these texts and know what they're saying. In the middle of that chart, he had one letter on there that I saw that really rocked my mind. Okay, hold on, there it is. Tet. Tet. Okay, you see that? It's like a circle with an X. And if you guys haven't read my book, you don't know what that really means to me. But I'll just put it to you guys frankly, because it's not my name. I'll just put it plainly. I was branded as a child in violence, horrific amounts of it, and unbelievable pain and suffering and trauma. Most people that are in the Becoming a Linenite group that don't know anything about my testimony, I challenge you to listen your way through my entire audiobook, which is on there for free, or go to my YouTube channel where you can watch it there, or you can go to my website and read it all there for free, or you can get a free download if you need one. Just ask me, I'll send it to you. I'm here to give. I share with you guys a lot more of my story in there than most people are comfortable with. And I don't talk a lot about my testimony in these videos because you know what? I've got a lot of other things that I need to get to, and I've spent many years doing that. So you guys can always dive into that. But during a portion of that time in my life, the circle with the X was something I was literally branded with. And it was a carrier for me as a token for me to do parasympathetic magic. It was a way of doing magic in these other spiritual realms that my family liked to worship in. My family was not raised to be righteous people. These were like the worst kinds of human beings on the earth. And because of that, that image has always been something that was impressed on me and something that actually terrified me in many ways and was nightmares to me. But when I was standing in this guy's house and I saw that letter on the wall, I recognized for the first time ever that maybe was being utilized in a way that I needed to understand. That maybe that would give me answers. That in this letters, in the Hebrew, maybe were the answers to the mystery of what this branding was and what this serpent coiled was. The tet, you guys, is oftentimes described as like a snake that's coiled, and like the modern Hebrew version of this looks like a snake with its fangs kind of pointing down on itself. So a lot of people attribute it to the serpent, and this is why I think the enemy has hijacked this symbol and utilizes it for his worship. That's literally why I talk about dragons a lot, you guys. Okay, that is what gave me a desire to learn Hebrew, and it was at the same time that linen came into our lives. And so those two are inseparable for me, which is why that is going to be a huge function of what we talk about on the Linenites. Also water, why you guys need to cold plunge in water. It will heal your bodies because these things are all so interconnected, which is like Hebraic concept thinking, that nothing is individual. Everything is chad. It's one flesh. It's one tree that's got 800 roots that are all going up into the sky simultaneously. You can't get away from it. A banyan tree is like this. You can't get away from it. They're interconnected. Tet, when I read the word tet in this, Psalm 34, and it says, taste and see that Yahweh is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. I finally got to understand what that was like when I worked by the sweat of my face and I could taste and see that he was good and he would provide for me a place of refuge. I got to experience that when I gave him full authority to run my life. And I challenge each of you guys to do likewise, for this sword will give you that life. Now here's the next one, Yod. Fear Yahuwah, you his set-apart ones, for there is no lack to them who fear him. Kaf, young lions have lacked and been hungry, but those who seek Yahuwah will not lack any good matter. Lamed, come, you children, listen to me. Let me teach you the fear of Yahuwah. Mem, who is the man who desires life? Who loves many days in order to see good? Noon, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Samach, turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Ayin, the eyes of Yahuwah are on the righteous and his ears are unto their cry. Pay. The face of Yahuwah is against evildoers, to cut off their remembrance from the earth. Zadi, the righteous cried out, and Yahuwah heard, and delivered them out of all their distresses. Kuf, Yahuwah is near to the brokenhearted, and saved those whose spirit is crushed. Resh, many are the evils of the righteous, but Yahuwah delivers him out of them all. Sheen, he is guarding all his bones, not one of them is broken. Tav, evil does slay the wrong, and those who hate the righteous are guilty. But Yahuwah redeems the lives of his servants, and none of those taking in refuge in him are guilty. This is the foundations of who it is that we are and who his people are. Like, if you guys would start to consider these words as precious, as you guys consider these things like linen and wool and bread and grain and water and oil, as you start to care about these things, as these things start to matter to you more than they did before, praise the Father in heaven, because he has given you a good gift. He has opened your eyes to see the treasures that are hiding all around you. But the greatest of treasures that we can ever find, you guys, is him, is who he is his character, is his Shem, his name, his glory. The wonders of walking in his ways will give you life, you guys. For the last 55 days, I have been plunging my body in cold water. And because of that, for the first time ever, I'm not screaming in agony while I'm working on these people's farms. Because my body is afflicted perpetually because of the life of bondage that I had. And because of the addictions that ravaged my mind, my body, and my soul every day for decades of my life. I was a ruinous heap, you guys. I used to literally carve those words into my left wrist every day. In Hebrew, ironically, I would write ruined on my left wrist every single day because that is what I believed I was, you guys. I was a ruined wasteland. I was a ruined heap, you guys. I could not stand up. I could not even stand up. And you know what? Still to this day, it is hard at times for me to just stand up. But don't worry, the Father has given us strength. And you know what? Getting in the water for me, putting on linen, wearing wet, soaking linen, literally relieves my body of tension and pain and suffering. And so that my suffering is not in vain. And it allows me the ability to boldly stand up when I would like to just lay down. You can ask my wife how many times a day I used to say, I just need to lay flat. I just need to lay flat because my back has just been crushed in so many ways. But the linen has lifted me. It has given me strength where I had none. It has given me courage and comfortability in environments that I hate being in, like heat. But now I've come to enjoy it because I can be wet and cold and freezing. And you know what? It gives me joy to be around it. Man, this is not at all what I thought I was going to talk to you guys about when it comes to the foundations of this. But you know what? It's inescapable because this is the Proverbs 31 women. You ready for this? She shall stretch out her hands to the distaff, and her hand shall hold the spindle. That's literally how you make wool or linen. You have these two things in your hand. Watch the video, you'll see. She shall extend her hand to the poor, and she shall reach out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is dressed in scarlet. She shall make tapestry for herself. She is dressed in fine linen and purple. The LinenRailroad, you guys, is something that many of you maybe don't know what it is, but you see random memes that we make for it. The LinenRailroad is this. We find linen because we're treasure hunters, right? You get that, right? And we send it to people who don't have it because some of you guys are in the barren wastelands known as Canada. Canadan, I love you guys, but sometimes you can't get anywhere out there because, you know, it's 40 degrees below outside, eh? That's how you all sound in my head. True story. Before I went to Canada for a conference call.
God has taken it upon himself in his grace and mercy to give us his revealed word in written scripture. Never has there been a sweeter gift to mankind than a God that is so holy and set apart from what we are now, that he has taken it upon himself to give us knowledge of himself in the written word. When I listen to Matt's presentation, the most fascinating part of the presentation is that God has given us an infallible book by which to judge things in our life.
Yeah. Before I went to a conference up in Canada, in Calgary, I literally thought Canadians spoke French only. I didn't even know you guys spoke English until I met a man named Robbie Davidson, and he spoke plenty fine English. And then I discovered basically all Canadians speak English. I'm sorry, please forgive me. You guys are just multilingual. Savage. I love you guys. But Canadians are people who frequently can't get out to their thrift stores anymore because, you know, bondage and slavery and face coverings and murder are taking place there all the time. And they just don't have linen a lot of times. So we send linen to people all over the world. This one, look at how many this thing's got like 6 garments in it. It's stinking heavy. There's also other treasures in there. I'm giving you a hint. It could have stuff like this. It's Nature Nate. You never know what you're going to get. But we literally just send these packages to people because freely the Father has given to us everything we've ever had. I would know nothing about linen. So what is it to me to take what we have found and not give it away? Like freely he's given it to us. Freely we must give it out to you guys. So we encourage each and every one of you to take the linen challenge by finding linen and giving it away to other people. Like, yes, some of you guys, I know you charge for shipping and you charge for the cost of the garments, and that's super reasonable. But you know what's so powerful? When you can give a gift completely. When you sacrifice everything you have to give a good gift to somebody who you see who's naked and needs to be clothed. Do you know what that means to that person who's never worn a real, authentic piece of clothing in their life? Like the Father sees that his people are naked. He sees that they're naked and he wants to clothe them. He sees that they're starving and he wants to feed them. And why don't we care about that more than we care about anything else that's going on in the world? Like, if I can't feed the people, what does it matter what I have to say? Like, Yeshua had great compassion on the people when he saw that they were starving. And you know what he turned to? He asked his disciples, what do you think we should do about that? He knew what he was going to do, but he asked them to test them. He wanted to know what we were willing to do about the poverty and the destruction and the nightmares that all of our neighbors around us are suffering from. What is it that matters to you when you see the people around you suffering and starving? Will you not go clothe them? Will you not go feed them? Will you not give them real water? These are like the basic things he promises to each and every one of us if we would obey him and listen to him. He will clothe you, he will feed you, and he will shelter you, and and water you. He promises that if you go and become his child and walk in obedience to him, he will give you everything you need. And so if you see people in need, I challenge you, give out of your little or your excess to clothe the naked, to feed the hungry, and to water those who thirst. This is how you do that, you guys. This is the textbook manual for finding ways for you personally to do that for other people. Give them the bread of life. Go watch our Becoming a Millenite series. And in doing so, feed them this. Because that's what they need, you guys. You ready for this? She is not, okay. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sits among the elders of the land, she shall make fine linen and sell them, and shall give girdles for the merchants. Strength and splendor are her garments, and she rejoices in time to come. Another translation, do you know what it says here? That she laughs in the time of adversity to come. Basically, let me put it this way. You know what my wife and I are not doing right now? Worrying, being scared or concerned about what's going to happen and what's to come. Do you know what we're doing? Laughing. I'm not joking. My wife and I have been laughing more than probably we ever have in our entire life. We've been legitimately rejoicing. Like, for the first time ever, my wife is going in the cold water with me. Like, that is such an incredibly exciting thing. The first time she ever really did that was when she plunged into the water and like came out of that like rejoicing and like invigorated. And yet it took a long time for her to get back in the water a lot. You know what I mean? And then winter came and like there's a lot less incentive. But she jumped in the water with me the other day and she came out rejoicing, glowing. Like, and I tell people, if you just get in the water, like just get in the water, you will be healed. Like you'll literally be healed. Like cold water, wild water will heal you. Will heal you. And I'm like a walking testimony. Get in it completely dressed in your linen too. Like while wearing that linen, because then suddenly, you know what, you feel this crazy warmth that comes out of the linen. I don't know how to explain what's going on in there, but when I wear linen and then I come out of that cold water, I still feel heat. And the first time we experienced that was when we mikvah'd. We baptized each other together in the river that was flowing full of garnets and gemstones. We came out of that water like fire. Like, it was the first time we'd ever experienced anything like that. And it was so good for our souls, you guys. It nourished our bodies. And my wife has been rejoicing because she's coming out of that water. And you know why she's in that water? Because she gave up her sacred cow. This is one fundamental for the Linenites, you guys. No sacred cows. If you got a sacred cow, get ready for me to stinking smash that thing. Where's my tiny hammer? Here's my tiny hammer, and I'm going to smash your idol into stinking pieces, and I'm good at it. And you know what? Because this is good at it. This is a living sword, you guys, and this is a tiny little hammer. And if you set up a sacred cow in your life, the Father, with his living sword, will cut that thing down, or he's going to cut you down, because they are not allowed in his kingdom. When the people set up their sacred calf to worship that thing, which was the ox, the bull, the Aleph, when they set that up, they literally engraved the name of Yahweh upon it, you guys. They said, this is the God who brought us up out of Egypt. Like, what an abomination. This is their wedding night. This was the first night they were supposed to be together. The ketubah, the marriage covenant was taking place. And you know what the people were doing while Moses was meeting face to face with Yahweh? While he was writing the commandments and the covenant on sapphire tablets with his own finger, the people were being a whore down below. They were engaging in orgies and all these nightmaric evils down below while they were playing, is some of the ways the English words like to translate it. That's not what they were doing. They weren't rising up to play. They were committing whoredom with another Elohim and a sacred calf. And because of that, Yahuwah was ready to destroy them. But you know what? We had an intercessor who rose up and pleaded with the Father to be merciful for the sake of his name. Because he is merciful, you guys. He is long-suffering. And so many of us have so many sacred cows in our life that we need to tear down. And vanity is a huge one. And you know what? When my wife shared that testimony, when we put that video out there, that's probably the most hate mail we've got in a long time. Because, you know, the people love it when the Reynolds put out a video of us eating wild plants or jumping in water or swimming up to an alligator. But then when we talk about one of their sacred cows, dang, do they get nasty. And some of you guys have bitterness in your soul, and it's made you filthy like Simon. If you don't know who that is, look it up. It's made you filthy and ragged. Because you guys do have vanity as an idol. And I'm talking to men here too, just as much as women. And if you guys would watch the entirety of that video, it's an hour and a half long. You can do a lot of worthless things in an hour and a half, or you can do something valuable that will change the life and the life of the people around you forever. Invested in here, okay? When we shared that video, there's unbelievable the amounts of reciprocity in an evil way that's come against us because of that. And you know what it reveals? The bitterness of heart that people have, and one of their sacred cows. And you know what? It was a giant sacred cow for us and my wife. And she would never get in the water, you guys, because she used to wear makeup. And because that stuff used to run off her face, and she felt like she looked like a fool when she had that. And so she vowed a vow to never get in the water again. But you know what? She renounced that. She repented of that. And she has gotten in the water, and she comes out rejoicing. And because of that, she can rejoice in the day of adversity, when all the rest of the world might be concerned with things that don't matter. My wife is concerned with learning his letters and learning his language and feeding her family and clothing the naked and feeding the poor. That's what matters to my wife now, because she's a new woman. She came out, she went into that water looking like a different woman, and she came out looking like the bride of the Messiah. She shall open her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the Torah of loving commitment. She watches over the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. I won't even get it. Her children shall rise up and call her blessed. Her husband too, and he praises her. Many daughters have done nobly, but you have risen over them all. Loveliness, vanity, is deceptive, and prettiness is vain. Beauty is deceptive, and prettiness is vain, but a woman who fears Yahuwah is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her work praise in the gates. My challenge for each and every one of you is that you yourselves would do likewise. I'm talking to you, men, that you would go into your household and smash every stinking sacred cow that you have. Every single idle thing that you set up, like the ones I talked about in the video, your jobs. Many of you men have made your job your idol. And you know what? It's a good thing. Some of you have made your ministry your idol. And you need to smash that thing down to pieces too. Otherwise, the Father will come along, you guys, and tear it down for you. But you know what's so much better? Is that Yahweh is merciful and slow to anger. He's not willing that any of us should perish. But you guys, he wants us to care about him more than we care about these things that we've set up. Some of you guys, it's your cars. Like some of you guys have made your car your idol. You have sacrificed your time, your energy, your emotions to getting the car just right, to getting your house to look a certain way, interior design and home decor. You want your house to look a way. Why? Because you're addicted to vanity. Because you guys want your children to go to a certain prestigious school so that you can look a certain part or they can get a certain job. Vanity. We are sending our children away to schools to be taught lies by people that will rape, pillage, and plunder their minds, their spirits, their wills, and their bodies. And you know what? That's an abomination. And that must be torn down and out of your life and rooted out. Because we were meant to raise our children. Us, not the whores of society, you guys, because they're people who are running this show, you guys, that have conspired with the dragon himself to see wickedness perpetrated on the people around us. But if we would regard his word as precious, he will turn it on their head. All those snares, you guys, that they've set up to destroy us, every one of those pitfalls that they put out there, you guys, they will be taken in them. If you read the book of Esther, you will see the most beautiful story of that ever. If you read how the Father loves to take what the enemy intended for evil and instead turn it into good in the saving of many lives. That's the entire story of Joseph. That's the entire story of the Aleph, Bet, and the Aleph to the Tav. when you hear the alphabet, the alphabet, when you get to know it, you will see this is his language. This is his narrative. He does these things. Though the enemy would coil around us like a serpent that's got us fully coiled in its coils and is crushing the life out of us, the Father will give us the sword to cut the serpent's head off so that we can be set free, and the blood of his body will instead become the thing that fertilizes the soil and bears fruit on the earth. So I pray you would be righteous and bold, because that is what being a Linenite is all about. That you are bold as a lion, and that you do not run when trouble comes your way. That you stand up, and that you would get your stinking feet under you, and that you would not turn away in the day of affliction. Let's do it. Ephesians 6. For the rest, my brothers, be strong in the Master and in the mightiness of his strength. Put on the complete armor of Elohim, for you to have power to stand against the schemes of the dragon. Because we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against authorities, against the world rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual matters of wickedness in the heavenlies. Because of this, take up the complete armor of Elohim, so that you have the power to withstand in the wicked day. And having done all, to stand. Stand then, having girded your waist with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having fitted your feet with the preparation of the good news of shalom. Above all, meaning none of the armor matters if you don't take this. This is the one piece of armor never to leave behind. Take up the shield of belief, with which you shall have the power to quench with water all the burning arrows of the wicked one. Take also the helmet of deliverance, or the helmet of Yeshua, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim, praying at all times with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, watching in all perseverance and supplication for all the set-apart ones. Take up the shield of belief, you guys, because you know what? If we don't gird our bodies with the belief in him, we have no armor, we have no shield. And if we do not have that shield, we cannot extinguish those fiery, precise, calculating, tactful, intricately planned and strategized little devices of the enemy to destroy us, to take away from us our life, our love, our passion. But most importantly, the enemy targets each and every one of us to steal our faith in him, because Yahweh is the master of legions. He is the king of the heavenly host. Nothing is impossible for him. There is no darkness in him. There is no shadow of turning. He is light. And the light should be in us so that we can shine before men in the days of darkness, that we could be the brilliant lights like the heavenly hosts that are in the firmament above us, shining down upon us in a sea of darkness. We can see that light is still burning. And Yahweh is always with us, and he will always be with you if you would treasure and value him. I love you guys. I look forward to talking to you more about some of this in the future. But as I always share with you guys, in the book of Esther, you will find out where it is I'm talking about, that you guys would know. I tell you, live dangerously every single day of your life, because the days are evil, but you were born for such a time as this. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.